It's basketball time in Tennessee as we continue with the...
Through the years, Tennessee basketball has enjoyed some tremendous moments. SEC championship seasons, trips to the NCAA and NIT. There have been great players, some that have left Tennessee to become great players in the NBA. Yet through the years and all the wins, through the coaches and the players, there remains one era that is still very special. A 3-year span that helped jettison Tennessee basketball to the national scene. An era known as the Ernie and Bernie Show. An era for opposing teams that proved to be double trouble in Tennessee.
Looks to King. Grunfeld drives into the lane, goes for a layup shot. Good! What a move he made! Ernie G. Moves, drives, lays it back over his head. Oh! Wrap that one up in orange. An unbelievable move by King of the Volunteers.
The foundation for success at Tennessee was laid in 1963 with the arrival of head coach Ray Mears. Mears coined the phrase, Big Orange Country. And 30 years after his arrival, it's apparent you can take the man out of the country, but you can't take the Big Orange out of the man.
I look at it this way, John. I sort of was the guy that promoted the orange and brought the orange in and brought in Big Orange Country. Then I better be the one that wears the orange. I better have an orange room. And if you're going to do something, you live it. That's the way I always felt.
In the early 60s at Wittenberg College in Ohio, Mears was living the life of a successful young coach. And that's exactly what the University of Tennessee was looking for.
Tennessee job was open about that time. It was just perfect time. I use the term, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it at the luncheon here, that I feel, and I really feel this way, I was destined to be the coach of Tennessee.
Mears inherited a Tennessee program that had posted winning seasons, but had never really threatened for the Southeastern Conference Championship, which was being dominated by Adolph Rupp and the Kentucky Wildcats. Mears quickly energized the Tennessee program. He brought showmanship to Tennessee basketball, along with outstanding coaching. His goal was offensive efficiency. Try and score every time you got the basketball. And that philosophy paid off. Immediately, Tennessee under Ray Mears became a force in the SEC. Finally, in 1967, the Volunteers captured the SEC championship. In 5 of the next 6 seasons, Tennessee either won or finished second in the SEC. Mears had built a contender and now was able to branch out and recruit nationally. In 1973, the recruiting path led Tennessee to New York City. Assistant coach Stu Aberdeen was on the trail of one of the nation's top talents, a 6'5" forward who was tearing up the New York high school scene, Ernie Grunfeld. Aberdeen was persistent in his wooing of Grunfeld.
And Coach Aberdeen was a great recruiter. He spent about a month straight up here in New York trying to recruit me. He tried to drive me home from school every day. I'd find out what gate he was at, and I'd go out a different door. I tried to duck him, but he was a terrific man, and he did a great job. I visited the University of Tennessee as well as Kentucky and Syracuse and Michigan and Notre Dame, and I felt like it was a good place for me to go to school. I felt like I could play as a freshman. I had played against college players while I was in high school. I more than held my own, and I wanted to go to a place where I can get an opportunity to play right away and play against top competition. And when I visited, I loved the facilities. I got to meet some of the players on the team, as well as Coach Ray Mears, who I just found very inspirational and a very solid man and an excellent coach. And I felt like it was a good place for me. I went there, and I started my freshman year and ended up leading the team in scoring as a freshman. So, as it turns out, it was a good decision.
Here's Ernie Grunfeld.
Tennessee was successful in winning the recruiting war for Grunfeld, in large part to the efforts of Stu Aberdeen. Working on Grunfeld didn't end at the recruiting trail. Aberdeen took a special interest in Grunfeld throughout his Tennessee career.
Oh, absolutely. He wasn't a very big man. He might have been about 5'4", 5'5", but he had tremendous energy and tremendous enthusiasm, and one of the hardest working people I've ever been around. And he always had his little gimmicks, and one of his gimmicks was that when you were going through layup lines or full court drills, as you were going in for a layup, he would have this broom where the bristles were taped, and he'd whack you with the broom to give you a little bit of contact. And sometimes he'd try to whack you pretty hard. I remember one day we were running up the court, and I get the ball, I go up hard. He hits me, and he hit me right in the eye. And I mean, he got me real good. And I just lost it. I chased him. I grabbed that broom, and I just broke the broom over my leg. And we had a good laugh about that a couple of days later, but he was upset at the time. But he was a
broom, didn't
he sure had another broom, and the other broom was bigger than the last one.
Grunfeld is a player.
Ernie Grunfeld mixed a soft jump shot with a powerful drive. A brilliant one-on-one player, he was perfectly suited for Tennessee's 1-3-1 offense. He started his first game at Tennessee and quickly proved his mettle.
Well, Ernie Grunfeld was a great rural dribbler, as I call it. Spin moves, and he wasn't very fast because he was a heavy-legged boy. It looked like he was a tight end, but he was faster than you'd think. But he was a great one-on-one player. He'd go one direction, and if you overplayed him, he would whirl the next direction and could get a step on you. For somehow he'd get a step, and he was one of the greatest one-on-one basketball players. And that's practically all I did with that guy. I didn't run any play. I didn't screen for him because he couldn't shoot over a screen like he could take it and go with him himself because he could beat a guy. And I would do that. And I think he's the best I've ever seen.
Ernie Grunfeld's strength, in my opinion, was intelligence. Intelligence, IQ, intelligence, knowing how to play the game. Took every advantage he possibly could of the team and the man who might be guarding him, and knew how to do it, knew all the tricks, and exploited them. And he had great skills, but most of all, he was a competitor.
During this time period in college basketball, only one team, the SEC champion, was allowed to go to the NCAA tournament. Tennessee in Grunfeld's freshman year advanced to the Conference Commissioners Tournament in St. Louis. A loss to Indiana ended Tennessee's season at 17-9. The next year, the recruiting trail took Tennessee east again, this time to the inner city in New York for another talented player, Bernard King. At 6'7", King was one of the most explosive players to ever hit the SEC.
When I was a freshman, we were recruiting actually two players who our coaches said that if we get any one of these players, we'll have a great recruiting year. One was Bernard King, the other one ended up being George Johnson. They were both the two best players in New York City. George also played in the pros. He went to St. John's. And when Bernard visited, being from New York, we had a lot in common. I took him out, and we hit it off. And he also had aspirations to play as a freshman. He had also played against college players during the summers and in the playgrounds, and more than held his own. And he also felt like he could contribute and play as a freshman. And again, it was Coach Aberdeen that I'm sure did the same thing with him as he did with me, camped out on his front porch until he finally got Bernard to sign. And he exploded on the scene, and he didn't go too far down from that the rest of his career. You could just tell he was a special player. He just had it. He had great quickness, great intensity, great energy. He's a tremendous competitor, a super runner, and he had that turnaround jump shot that was unstoppable.
Well, our offense for Bernard King was about as easy as any offense you ever had. We flashed him the low post and fed him low, and he just turned around and shoot that quick jump shot, and it was 2 points.
Watch King.
In his first career start, Bernard King hit for 42 points. And Tennessee was bracing to hit the SEC with double trouble, the Ernie and Bernie show.
We had seen him in practice, he and Grunfeld, and there were some other. Tennessee had a good basketball team, but they were special. And Bernard was special in practice, but the first game, which was against a team from Wisconsin, I think Wisconsin-Milwaukee, I think was the team. And Bernard King just absolutely took over. I don't remember how many points, 40-some. And people they had heard about Bernard King and, a great player and all that.
Here's a typical King maneuver. A rebound and score without touching the floor.
But nobody, I don't think, imagined exactly what he could do. And he came out, and that so lightning-like release that he scored and people hadn't seen it yet. And it took some time to adapt to it. And I'll never forget the first game and just sitting there after the game and taking a deep breath and saying, did we see what we just saw? And so we got to see it for 3 years. I'll never forget his first game.
I mean, you couldn't stop him. Big guys couldn't stop him. Small guys couldn't stop him.
The other thing, and I was up to New York when they went into the Hall of Fame there in New York, King said we had a little chemistry about us that we could play together better than anybody that I know of. King and Grunfeld, he said. And this is how we could score, because if he was open, cutting across the middle, and I had an 8-foot jump shot, he said I'd always hit Grunfeld coming across, and he would hit me if that was the other case. But we had something in it that no one else seemed to have, is that we knew who was open and who could get the shot, and we'd get it to him. We had that kind of chemistry.
King was silky smooth, so quick, impossible to stop down low. 5 times he hit for more than 40 points in a game during his Tennessee career. While blessed with ability and size, King also worked for his rewards.
Only saw him 3 times. First day of practice. And we broke down into our shooting drills, which Grunfeld will tell you went about 45 minutes. He said, "That's one of the best things you ever did." That is one thing we talked about one time. And so we broke down, and we put the big man down one end, which we called the big man, and King happened to be 6'7", so he was a big man, and we had about 6 down there with him. And one more in a minute, and someone tapped me on the shoulder. Now, I'll tell you, John, no one ever tapped me on the shoulder in 20 years of basketball coaching. Once the practice started, we went to work. And I looked around, and it was King. And I said, "What do you want, King?" And he said, "Coach, they're not working me hard enough down at the other end." Now, I've never had a guy ever tell me we didn't work him hard enough. If anything, they probably would like to say, "You're working us too hard." But he was right, because we would break him down to about 5, 6 guys, and he'd have to take his turn. So he wasn't getting the ball as often as he's used to getting it. This is one of the first things that he taught me about him. And I said, "What do you propose, King?" He said, "Coach," he says, "you see, you got 6 goals here. You're only using 4 of them. How about me taking the ball and go down that 5th goal and working by myself?" I thought about it a little bit. I said, "This guy's kind of conned me. He's from New York City. I never had a New York City boy before." And I said, "Okay, King, go down that goal." Well, I was so anxious to see what King was going to do down that goal, I forgot what I was doing, where I was supposed to be, and I was turning around, and I'm watching him, and I've never seen a guy work as hard on moves. Now, the kind of moves that we were working on are big man moves, big pivot man. He wasn't a big man move type. He was working on ways of getting loose, getting the ball, shooting that quick shot. He knew more what he needed than we did. And I told Aberdeen, I said, "Aberdeen, we never did teach King anything, did we?"
And Tennessee had 2 of the
It was a
best
special
in
time in the
Grunfeld
SEC in the
and
mid-70s. Not only had Tennessee moved itself into a contender spot, Alabama with C.M. Newton, and Vanderbilt had also upgraded its program to compete with Kentucky. But still, only the SEC champion would advance to the NCAA tournament, so a 20-win season wouldn't get you into the big show. Each game in the conference race took on monumental importance. A team's home court became intensely protected by the fans who packed arenas every game night. And the favorite target of scorn, Ernie, Bernie, and the coach in the orange jacket.
Yes, he would. That was a thing that he liked to do, so all the fans would get a nice opportunity to boo him as he was coming across. And Coach Mears, he was a real marketing genius. You know, he always had an angle. He always knew how to motivate the team, and he also knew how to get the other team upset. And I love to go play on the road because they really hated us. You know, we had the Sweet Georgia Brown music, and we had all our ball handling drills, and people all over the conference really knew about this, and they would come early just to watch us in warm-ups because we really put on a show for about 10 minutes. Coach Mears was a big believer in that. At one time, he even had someone with a unicycle come out and juggle basketballs. He did away with that by the time I got there, but it was great going on the road and feeling the energy and the enthusiasm of the fans that were really rooting against you.
Grunfeld, yes, he would prefer to play on the road, and that's perfectly in line with his personality. He was a competitor, and he loved the tough situations. He loved to be challenged. And when Tennessee goes on the road, of course, in those days, Bernard King, Ernie Grunfeld, Ray Mears. You take those three into any Southeastern Conference arena or gym, whatever the case may be, and people were there waiting on them, waiting to yell and scream and throw things and whatever, thinking they would upset them, intimidate them. That made them play harder. That's exactly what they wanted. They could, you know, Tennessee fans were supportive, but they really got enthused when people were saying, "We're challenging you. There's no way you're going to beat us." And Grunfeld and King would say, "Just watch."
Taking the Ernie and Bernie show on the road in the SEC created extreme emotions. But at home, and the friendly confines of Stokely Athletic Center, Tennessee fans roared their approval at every move made by King and Grunfeld.
Oh, it was a great atmosphere. We sold out every game, and the introductions were great. They had this big T, and one player, you know, that would come through when all the lights are out and the spotlights were on you, and it was covered, so the first player would get to break the paper that was covering the T, and we'd all come out, and the enthusiasm, the energy, you know, the marching band would come out in front of you and march around the place, and by the time we got out there, the fans were just wacko, you know, they were so into it, and it was just a great home court. It was a great place to play. It was a strange shape for an arena because it was very long, and in the end zones you had people right on top of you, and it was a very tough place to play for visiting teams. And I think every game we ever played in college, we gave a great effort. I think that's one of the reasons fans enjoyed coming and watching us play, because we left it out on the floor. We gave a great effort. We dove for loose balls out of bounds. We competed, and we took a great pride in winning basketball games. It's not very often you have two players on a team that can combine for 50 every night. And I think we were very consistent, and it was really fun playing for Bernard. Whenever he was double-teamed and I'd cut to the basket, he'd give me the ball. And if I got double-teamed on one of my drives, I try to get him the basketball. So I think we complemented each other and worked very well together. And we also had a little bit of arrogance to our game at times, which fans in other arenas did not like too much, but I know the fans at Stokely loved it. You know, I think the reason we were a little bit cocky and confident was because we've proved it. You know, we worked very hard in practice. We put our time in on the practice floor, and that's how you get that confidence, because you know that you've outworked the other team, your opponent, not only during the game, but also on the practice floor. We were both very big believers that you play like you practice, and every practice to us was just like a real game. So by the time the real games came around, it was easy.
But it was never easy in this classic rivalry with Kentucky. But against the Wildcats, Ernie and Bernie seemed to thrive.
They lived to play the big game. They played hard in every game, but when it was a big game, and that in many respects meant Kentucky, to be honest with you, they were ready.
Tennessee and Kentucky split during Grunfeld's freshman year in '74, each team winning at home. In 1975, Bernard King was a freshman and faced Kentucky for the first time at Memorial Gym in Lexington. Kentucky won that game 88-82.
And after the game, this was at Memorial Coliseum, and you walk out at Memorial Coliseum through sort of a little vomitory is actually what it is. You walk out going to the dressing room. And as they walk out, Of course, the Kentucky fans are very knowledgeable basketball fans, but King had done some things, you know, and they said, you'll never beat us and that thing, and they were throwing. And somebody threw a cigarette on Bernard King, a lighted cigarette. And he did not react at that moment. Went into the dressing room, and he's the kind that type thing, he didn't react well to that normally. But he just kept under control, went in and sat down, and the newspaper writers came in and they said, what'd you think about that? What about them throwing the cigarettes on you and so forth, and throwing things on you to come out? And Bernard said, well, it was a tough game. They played very well. We tried hard. They won the ball game. And I want to tell you one thing. They'll never beat us again as long as I'm playing. They never beat Tennessee again as long as he played. Tennessee won 5 straight games. I'll never forget. I was in the dressing room. I'll never forget it.
Competitor extraordinary. I didn't realize at the time that I was dealing with one of the great players I've ever had, because he shot so quick and everything and put him in, made everything look so easy. But he was that kind of competitor that you'd want to talk about.
But the greatest Tennessee game with King and Grunfeld has to be the win in Knoxville against Kentucky.
Set to go as Tennessee plays Kentucky in Knoxville. The ball is up. It is tipped. It is taken by Kentucky's Greavy.
The return match was at Stokely Center in Knoxville. Kentucky had 5 great players many felt would go on to the NBA and bring another national championship to the Bluegrass State. But Tennessee had Ernie and Bernie, and on this night, that was good enough.
Looks for Grunfeld on the left side. The pass goes to him. Working on Guyette. Takes him in low. Switching off Roby. Picks him up. 15-footer. Good. Woods past the line. Lead past Grunfeld. He's got a shot. Fakes. In closer. 15-footer in the air. Bottom. Grunfeld hits for Tennessee. The Vols lead by 13. Grunfeld powers down deep. 15-footer up by Grunfeld. Give it to him. A swish from Ernie G. And Tennessee leads by 12. Woods continues the dribble. He'll take the shot. 23-footer in the air. Bottom! As the first half comes to a close. Score at the end of the first half. Tennessee 56. Kentucky 44.
It was an exciting first half for Vol fans, and there's more excitement ahead.
King is setting up at a high post on the right extension of the free throw line. Pass comes over to Ashworth. Inside it goes to King. He goes. He lays it up there. Shot is good by King. 10-point game. Tennessee in front court. Jackson to King. King stops, lays it up there. Good by King. Beautiful feed by Jackson. Grunfeld comes out top of the key, guarded by Guyette. Grunfeld shovels the ball to Woods. Woods works his way down low, gives it into Grunfeld. Grunfeld drives, 10-footer up there, no good. Picks off the rebound, in there for a layup. Good by Grunfeld. Tennessee works on the offensive board. Jackson working on Connor. Wants to get the ball to King. Does. King moves. King drives. King lays it up. Good by King. King with 18, just powering his way under for a layup. 82-78, Tennessee leading by 4. Jackson guarded by Connor. King guarded here by Gibbons. Bounce pass goes to King. King drives, he stops, he goes up for the layup. No good, he gets it, goes back up. Good by King. King's got 20. Woods for the Vols. Lead pass in front court comes to Grunfeld. He'll drive, he'll stop, he'll shoot. Shot is no good. King rebounds. Good! Woods reversing, goes down deep, comes back to the left side. Looks for King, not there. Now King gets the ball, works, drives on Roby, spins, goes inside. 10-footer is good by King. King's got 24. Tennessee leads by 4, 92-88. The pass comes into Jackson in the right corner. Jackson for the Vols, gives it back over to Grunfeld. Grunfeld is fouled. Jumping in to foul him was Johnson. Grunfeld's free throw is in the air. The shot is good. Tennessee 102, Kentucky 98. 6 seconds to go in the game. Tennessee close to upsetting the nation's 4th-ranking team. Here's Ernie Grunfeld. The shot. Good! Tennessee by 5. Kentucky with the ball. Pass stolen on the inbound pass. Grunfeld. Grunfeld counts the clock down. Tennessee has beaten Kentucky. Final score, Tennessee 103, Kentucky 98.
Tennessee won the game 103-98, and that began a 5-game winning streak against the Wildcats.
Well, you know, it was very gratifying, not only because of the rivalry, the importance to the Tennessee fans, but because Kentucky was always a powerhouse. I didn't really realize how intense and deep the rivalry was until I had been in that environment for 2-3 years. And there's some real hate there between the two schools, but it's a good, friendly type of hate, you know, where teams just want to do better than everybody else. I know Kentucky built Rupp Arena, and they had 24,000 seats, and I understand Tennessee now has their own arena that has 24,001.
The first episode of the Ernie and Bernie Show resulted in an 18-8 record. King and Grunfeld began their second season together during the 1975-76 season. This was one of the most remarkable teams in Tennessee basketball history. In the past, the Volunteers had the benefit of a good big man, but this Tennessee team had no dominating post player. In fact, Doug Ashworth, recruited as a 6'5" shooting guard, earned the job as Tennessee's center.
But you're right, we had a very small team, but we didn't play small. You know, Bernard King, he was 6'6", 6'7", but he averaged 14, 15 rebounds a game. One of the best in the country. I think that part of his game gets overlooked a lot. He was a tremendous rebounder with great spring and great jumping ability and great desire to get the basketball. And for 3 years, he also averaged not only 15 or 15 and a half rebounds a game to go along with his 24, 25 points. So those are pretty impressive stats.
This 1976 Tennessee team would not overpower squads, but they would outwork, outshoot, and outthink opponents. Tennessee won 9 of its first 10 games that season. The Volunteers beat Duke and Michigan at home and then swept through Army and Clemson in the Vol Classic at Stokely Center. The quick start of the Volunteers caught the eye of more than just the Tennessee faithful. It also earned King and Grunfeld one of sports' greatest honors, the cover of Sports Illustrated. This dynamic duo was no longer a secret from the rest of the country, but for Ernie and Bernie, the focus was still winning on the court.
I do have that frame. You know, my kids get a real kick out of that. You know, at the time that it happened, you know, it was really no big deal to us. You know, we got on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Great. You know, when is our next game? That's the way we kind of looked at it. But, you know, looking back at it now, it's really a thrill to see that. It's really a thrill, especially when my kids look at it. You know, it's something that their dad did that not many people do.
Tennessee was 10-1 as they traveled north to Lexington to face Kentucky one more time. It was one of the more memorable games in SEC history. Tennessee and Kentucky hooked up in another classic. Grunfeld had a career-high 43 as Tennessee handed the Wildcats their last loss at Memorial Gym 90-88 in overtime.
We also had the overtime game at Kentucky where I had 43 in that game, and Bernard King makes an incredible shot to put us into overtime. I mean, he was parallel to the ground. It was we were down 2 points with about a second left. We had the ball at half court. We call timeout ball at half court. We set up a play, and we throw a lob to Bernard. It was impossible. He couldn't get it, and he went up, and he just kept going up. He got the ball, and he got undercut. And as he's falling down, he's parallel to the ground. He throws the ball up, banks in. We go into overtime, and we win the game in overtime. And there's just some really great memories in that competition there.
Probably the game that most people remember, and I remember vividly, was at Lexington when Coach Joe B. Hall was the coach of Kentucky. They had a great basketball team, as always. Big people, Roby and all those people. And we had King and Grunfeld. And Kentucky, methodically running their offense, built up a 14-point lead on Tennessee with 7 minutes to go in the game. Then Kentucky got out of their methodical system of play and started to hold the basketball. There was no clock in those days, no shot clock. They started to hold the basketball. They weren't comfortable doing that. And Tennessee began to chip and chip and chip, and Grunfeld and King would do things like this.
Down deep goes the pass to Givens in the corner. Double teamed on the left side. Works on Grunfeld. Drives past him. Shoots a 20-footer. Bad shot. Rebound King. Tennessee doing quite a job defensively. Clark gets the ball from King. Comes past the timeline. Tennessee trailing by a score of 75-67. To Grunfeld. Cross-court pass Crosby. Given inside to Chapman. Chapman goes up for a little one-hander. That is good by Chapman. Tennessee closes it to 6. Kentucky has changed the tempo.
And of course, that's the game where Grunfeld, getting back to his intelligence and the fact that he took advantage of every break, we had a kid named Chapman who was playing, couldn't shoot a free throw, And so they got fouled and people shoved around, and so it was at this end of the court. Moving to our end, it was at Kentucky's end, and they called a foul on some Kentucky player, and so they go to the free throw line. Well, I knew Chapman had been fouled because it happened right in front of me. But they got to the line, there's Grunfeld at the free throw line.
Well, what I remember about that was it was at Kentucky. We happened to win the game. That was the game where I had 43 points, you know, and all anybody talks about is a couple of foul shots. But I remember the play that happened. Irv Chapman and I were under the basket, and the Kentucky player jumped over our backs. Now, I don't know if it was his back or my back, but I know that I was a much better foul shooter than him, and I was going to take the foul shots. I went to the foul line. I took the foul shots, made them.
We kept chipping, and got it down to where we were I've forgotten the score, but it was very close. And they pass the ball around, and Bernard pops out, and they throw the ball to him, and he stumbles and was falling back on and he was on his back. And I'm sitting here, and he's right in front of me that far, and put the ball up, and it went in the goal.
We win the game. We go on to Vanderbilt, I believe our next game was. We pick up the papers the next morning, and headlines are Grunfeld cheats, you know.
The timeline, Guns with 1 second to go, a 40-footer that is no good.
Tennessee finished 21-6 overall, 14-4 in the SEC, and earned a trip to the NCAA tournament. Ernie Grunfeld turned down a chance to go to the NBA after his junior year. He returned to the Tennessee team and teamed with Bernard King for one final season. Before that, though, Grunfeld had helped the USA win a gold medal at the Olympics in 1976. And now he returned to Tennessee to try and help the Volunteers win an SEC championship. Ernie Grunfeld was born in Romania. He came over to the United States when he was 8 years old. So winning a gold medal for the USA, graduating from college, and winning an SEC championship was as important to his parents as it was to Grunfeld. In a feature from the Ray Mears TV show in 1976, it shows that Ernie Grunfeld had two very special fans.
Grunfeld in front court, towers his way into the lane. Little four-footer is up there, good. Grunfeld, a money player. Ernie G. of Tennessee, and the Vols lead by 7 points.
How does it feel to be the mother of a celebrity like this?
I am very proud of him. It feels very good, real good.
Do you get nervous when you're watching him play ball on a night like this?
Yes,
Do you ever talk to him before a ball game?
always.
What do you say to him before?
I wish him good luck. He wants that always because he says, if I wish him good luck, then he plays good.
Ernie, you have lots of fans all over the country, but two of your biggest fans have to be your parents.
Oh, definitely. They've supported me ever since high school. You know, whenever I wanted to play basketball, that was first. You know, we had to go over to my uncle's or something. I said, I had a game, you know. You go to your game, we'll go to your uncle's and explain. And it's been like that ever since then. Basketball always came first to them. You know, whatever I had to do with basketball, that was it.
And they've been down to see you play so far 3 times this season.
Yes, 3 times this season. I think they came down twice last season, twice when I was a freshman.
How many years have you been watching your son play ball?
Not too many years. He started to play in the high school. We didn't even know it. Just one day the coach called us, Mr. and Mrs. Grunfeld, come to see your son. He's a great player. My husband didn't believe him. So we went anyway, you know, and I was very surprised.
What did you think the first time you saw him playing?
I like it. Very strong in the family. My husband was also a sportman. He played soccer and ping pong.
Your father gets kind of excited during the games.
Yeah, well, he was an athlete himself. You know, he's real competitive, and I guess he feels like he's playing through me in a way, and I'm glad he is excited because it means that he wants me to do well.
I can remember one game in particular where he rushed out onto the court and grabbed you and gave you a big old hug.
Well, he did that after the Kentucky game, and he did it again after the Vanderbilt game because he thought I played well in both games, and that was his way of congratulating me.
In 1977, the Volunteers jumped out to an 8-0 start in the SEC. The addition of freshman center Reggie Johnson added size and scoring in the middle for Tennessee.
Tennessee with the ball, ripping pass in front court. Grunfeld goes to work on Caesar, beats him, takes him low, stops, goes up for a layup shot, good, and he was fouled. What a play by Ernie G. Sensational drive by Grunfeld. Tennessee moving to your right in the first half. Tip, Tennessee, goes to Grunfeld. Down the right side, looks for a cutter, gives to King. King makes a move, 15-foot jumper is up, bottom. King of the Volunteers. Tennessee leads 2-0. Lead pass Jackson on the right side, inside King. King spinning 4-footer up in the air, bottom. What a shot. King scores along the baseline. Darden to the left, gives to Grunfeld. Fakes, edges in closer, little 4-footer up by Grunfeld, good. Grunfeld on the left side, going to work one-on-one. Drive, stops. Underhand shot, good by Grunfeld, just penetrating down the right.
The Volunteers finished the SEC season 16-2 and won the conference championship. Overall, the Volunteers that year were 22-6. The season included 2 more victories against Kentucky, and Bernard King had kept his promise.
The Vols win 5 straight from the Wildcats.
It's been 2 decades since Ernie Grunfeld and Bernard King played their first game together at Stokely Center. Grunfeld scored 2,240 points at Tennessee. Only Allen Houston has scored more. Bernard King, in only 3 seasons, scored 1,962 points, still 5th on Tennessee's all-time list. And remember, all these totals were logged before the 3-point shot.
Well, I am proud of that. You know, occasionally I look at that, you know, in the 4 years that I played in college, I played 101 games. You know, if I look at some of the players, because back then we only played about 24, 25 games a year, a lot of players now are playing 33, 34, 35. So by the end of a player's career, if he played as a freshman, if he was good enough to play as a freshman, he might end up playing between 135 and 140 games. So that even makes me feel better about the things that I did, because I did it in maybe one less season, so to speak, as far as games are concerned. And there were a lot of points, but again, I was more proud of the wins than the points.
They battled not only for the scoring lead at Tennessee, but in the SEC as well. King won 2 SEC scoring titles, and when he didn't win it, Ernie Grunfeld did.
His freshman year, my sophomore year, he won the SEC scoring title. And the following year, I won the SEC scoring title, beating him out by like a 1/10 of a point. And the following year, he won the scoring title again, beat me out by a point or a point and a half, you know. But we never looked at who scored how many points or who got how many rebounds. You know, stats I always felt were for losers. You know, the bottom line is who wins the games and who makes the big plays. You know, the reason we won a lot of games is because we did a lot of things that don't even show up on the stat sheet, like diving for a loose ball or boxing out your man, or maybe making an extra pass, or blocking a shot coming over from the weak side, or drawing an offensive foul. You know, things that never show up in the box score, but we took great pride in doing the little things also that it takes to win basketball games.
Bernard King averaged 25.8 points a game in his career at Tennessee, still the best in UT history. Ernie Grunfeld is second at 22.3 points per contest.
Grunfeld, give it to him.
Both Ernie and Bernie went on to have distinguished NBA careers. In fact, at one time, they were reunited in New York with the Knicks for a few seasons. But these 2 New Yorkers, from different backgrounds and different playgrounds, will always be remembered by Tennessee fans for bringing a new excitement and electricity to Tennessee basketball. Head coach Ray Mears was known as the Barnum of basketball, and for 3 special seasons, it was Ernie Grunfeld and Bernard King who performed the greatest show in Big Orange Country.
In our Battle Show People Corner this week, we're visiting with the Director of Athletics at the University of Tennessee, Bob Woodruff. And Coach Woodruff, I think the most novel idea that Tennessee fans have heard about in a long time is what's called encapsulation. And encapsulation means perhaps a new basketball arena for Tennessee, and you can sort of describe what's in the works and what's been reported to the Athletics Board.
Well, John, I think the News Sentinel did a good job in presenting the architect and engineer's report last Sunday. It is a soft shell structure over the horseshoe with a permanent north stand section that would roll down, cover the basketball floor, furnish the lights and all the necessary heating and other sound equipment and so forth. The big thing about it, the way I look at it, if we build a new section in the north stands of some 5,000 box seats, which we could use for football, then we can have 27,000 seats for basketball and also complete the additional 10,000 seats for football in the South Stadium.
Encapsulation, a word that Tennessee fans might very well be talking about, as basketball could be played before 27,230 people in the south end of Neyland Stadium.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 1967 Ball Rally Girls. Coach Ray Mears, you were in Montreal at the Olympic Games. You're a coach, a teacher. What does it feel like for you to see Americans and other people competing in the Olympics?
John, it's a great thrill for me, and particularly when we have Americans from the University of Tennessee competing. Of course, Ernie Grunfeld, one of our super All-Americans, participated for us and won a gold medal, and this is a great thrill for me as a coach to be involved in something as gigantic as the Olympics.
Do you have any different feeling watching an Olympic game than you would a Tennessee basketball game?
Well, John, you know, Tennessee basketball is pretty exciting, and with the crowd and enthusiasm we have, it's really exciting for me to be a head basketball coach at the University of Tennessee, but this was a little different. We were out there with people from all races and given an opportunity to see some of the fine men in the entire world, and I think it had a little different perspective to it, and I really was excited about the fact that I was a major part of this program.